Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It is a pleasure to have you here with us for another deep dive into the stories that are shaping our world. Today, we have a topic that is as controversial as it is crucial, a story filled with lessons, shocks, and details that might just leave you speechless. We are going to talk about a nation that, for as long as we can remember, has been the global poster child for freedom, liberalism, and an almost limitless acceptance of the other. But suddenly, the script has flipped. The scales have tipped, and the narrative has changed drastically due to the cumulative effects of migration policies and cultural clashes, specifically involving the Muslim community. So, grab your coffee, settle in, and let us unravel the strange and gripping tale of what is happening in the Netherlands, and how a country famous for being on the far left of the tolerant spectrum has transformed into a place that is unrecognizable to its former self. A few years ago, if someone had come to you and predicted that the Netherlands, that land of open borders, legalized vices, and radical acceptance, would one day be led by a man who wants to close mosques and ban the Quran, you would have likely called them crazy. You would have said that such a scenario was impossible in a country known for being the most tolerant in the world. Yet, as history often reminds us, the impossible has a habit of becoming reality. This is exactly what happened in November 2023. The entire world paused in shock when Geert Wilders and his Party for Freedom, PVV, secured a massive victory, winning the largest number of votes in the Dutch general election. Now, Wilders is not your typical politician. He arrived with a vision that completely overturns the traditional Dutch table. He stood up and declared, in no uncertain terms, that the era of woke politics is over, and that the experiments of multiculturalism and mass migration have proven to be total failures. It seemed that the Dutch people had been waiting years for someone to finally say these words out loud. The silent majority voted for him because they wanted secure borders, a halt to asylum seekers, and the deportation of illegal immigrants and criminals. To truly grasp the magnitude of this political earthquake, we have to remember that for decades, the Netherlands was the beacon of progressive values in Europe. They were the first to legalize same-sex marriage, they tolerated soft drugs, they allowed euthanasia, and they wore their cultural and religious diversity like a badge of honor. So, the question that demands an answer is this: how does a nation built on the very foundation of tolerance end up electing a leader who believes Islam is incompatible with democracy? This transformation was not a coincidence, nor did it happen overnight. It is the result of a long, slow process that happened quietly in the background. Cracks in the societal foundation that were allowed to widen for decades while everyone pretended not to see them. To understand this, we must travel back in time, all the way to the 17th century. While the rest of Europe was burning people at the stake for heresy, the Dutch, Catholics and Protestants alike, were living in relative peace. You see, the Dutch have always been shrewd merchants. They understood before anyone else that you cannot build a global trading empire if you are busy persecuting people for their beliefs. You have to tolerate differences to keep the business running. Amsterdam became a refuge for the persecuted of Europe and the capital of free thought and printing. However, and this is a crucial however, this tolerance came with a condition. It was an unwritten social contract. The deal was, you can keep your religion, your language, and your customs, but you must respect the general rules that hold Dutch society together. These rules were rooted in ancient Calvinist values: personal responsibility, austerity, hard work, and discipline. You were allowed to be different, provided you didn't rock the boat or disrupt the public order that kept the nation functioning. This invisible contract balanced the Netherlands for centuries. Then came the 1960s. The Dutch economy was skyrocketing, unemployment was almost non-existent, and the country desperately needed laborers for hard, low-paying jobs. The government signed agreements with other nations, and between 1965 and 1975, over 11,000 workers arrived from Turkey and Morocco. They were called gastarbeiter, or guest workers. The very name implied the plan. They would work for a few years, save money, and return home. But reality had other plans. These workers did not leave. Instead, they brought their families and settled down. Here lies the catastrophic error of the Dutch government. They never stopped to think about how to integrate these newcomers into the fabric of society. They didn't force them to learn Dutch, nor did they teach them the values of Dutch citizenship. On the contrary, in the name of tolerance, they told them to preserve their culture, language, and religion entirely. The government actually funded Arabic and Turkish language lessons inside Dutch schools. They promoted something called passive multiculturalism, essentially encouraging everyone to live in their own separate bubbles. The authorities were terrified of enforcing integration because they didn't want to be accused of cultural imperialism. This was a historic mistake. The Netherlands opened its doors and offered tolerance, but asked for no integration in return. Consequently, the society ceased to be a unified entity with shared values and began to fracture under the weight of an insular Islamic culture. Over time, partly due to public housing policies, immigrants clustered in specific neighborhoods in the big cities. These areas became closed-off ghettos where the Dutch language was rarely heard, and where the population of Moroccan or Turkish descent reached up to 80%. They began to live in parallel societies. Their children went to their own schools, and the parents lived on the false hope that they would one day return to their homelands. That day never came. Without realizing it, the Netherlands stopped building a cohesive society and started building a culturally segregated one. The first generation that arrived kept their heads down. They worked hard, knowing they were guests. Crime rates among them were actually lower than among native Dutch people. But the explosion happened with their children, the second and third generations born in the Netherlands. These young people found themselves lost in the middle. They weren't fully integrated Dutch citizens, nor were they truly Moroccan or Turkish. They grew up without roots and without a clear identity. This identity crisis led to disastrous outcomes: high dropout rates, poor command of the Dutch language, unemployment, and deep social frustration. The statistics are truly alarming. More than half of the young men of Moroccan descent in the Netherlands have been suspected of at least one crime before the age of 23. We began to see the rise of so-called black schools, where the majority of students are non-Western, and mosques began to replace churches, sometimes exporting radicalism rather than community spirit. Supermarkets changed to sell halal food, and the face of society drifted far from the secular values the nation was built upon. It is not just about language or food. It is a fundamental clash of values. A study in 2014 revealed that 65% of Muslims in Western Europe, including the Netherlands, believe that religious laws are more important than the laws of the state. 60% said they would not want to be friends with homosexuals, and a significant percentage expressed distrust of Jews and a belief that the West wants to destroy Islam. These are not minor cultural quirks. These are entirely different worldviews. In public swimming pools, there were demands for gender segregation. Young girls were pressured into wearing the hijab. Teachers lost control in classrooms because students simply did not respect their authority. In some neighborhoods, street culture became dominated by religious rules that competed with the authority of the state, because people there saw themselves as part of the Ummah, the Islamic nation, rather than part of the Netherlands. Even the economy took a hit. Unemployment among Moroccan and Turkish communities was double that of the native Dutch, and 40% of Moroccan families relied on state welfare. This placed immense pressure on the education, health, and security systems. The working class began to feel that the generous Dutch welfare system would collapse if this continued, because a society cannot function if one part works while another part lives off the proceeds without contributing. The greatest tragedy was the silence of the Dutch elite. For decades, the political and cultural establishment ignored the problem. Parties on the left and the right made a gentleman's agreement not to discuss immigration during elections to avoid social unrest. Multiculturalism became a sacred cow, and anyone who criticized it was immediately branded a racist or intolerant. The media focused only on success stories, hiding the catastrophic data regarding crime and unemployment. Academics who warned of the dangers were accused of lacking credibility, and whistleblowers lost their jobs. This wall of silence finally cracked in 2002 with the arrival of Pim Fortuyn. He was a sociology professor turned politician who broke the taboo. Fortuyn wasn't a traditional far-right extremist. He was openly gay and a staunch defender of secularism. But he spoke the uncomfortable truth. The problem wasn't immigration per se, but the lack of integration and the refusal to admit it. He warned that political Islam threatened the rights of women, gays, and freedom of speech. His popularity skyrocketed. But just 9 days before the election, Pim Fortuyn was assassinated, shot dead by a radical activist who claimed he did it to protect Muslims. It was the first political assassination in the Netherlands in centuries, and it shook the country to its core. 2 years later, the filmmaker Theo van Gogh was slaughtered in broad daylight on a street in Amsterdam by a Dutch Islamist of Moroccan origin. His crime? Making a film that criticized the treatment of women in Islam. After that, fear took up residence in the hearts of the Dutch people. It wasn't just a fear of terrorism, it was a fear of speaking out. The society became paralyzed, proud of its tolerance, yet unable to defend itself. They woke up one day to find themselves in a country they no longer recognized. Amidst this chaos and fear, Geert Wilders emerged to fill the vacuum. A seasoned politician, he saw that traditional parties were too afraid to speak, so he founded the Party for Freedom in 2006 with one clear enemy: Islam. Wilders didn't mince words. He stated that Western culture was superior to Islamic culture and labeled Islam as a totalitarian ideology disguised as a religion. He called for closing borders, banning the Quran, and shutting down mosques. His style was aggressive and direct, which resonated with many people who had bottled up these feelings for years but were too afraid to express them. He even released a film called Fitna, linking Quranic verses to terrorism, causing a global uproar. His popularity grew year after year, from 9 seats in 2006 to becoming the third largest force in 2010. Wilders was smart. He evolved his rhetoric. Instead of focusing solely on banning mosques, he began to talk about security, the economy, and reducing non-Western migration. The people who voted for him didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but they were fed up with the government's silence and denial. Every time the establishment tried to silence him or drag him to court for hate speech, he only grew stronger. Today, he lives under 24-hour police protection due to constant death threats. Current statistics show the depth of the crisis. Reports in 2024 indicate that migration and integration are the top concerns for 37% of the Dutch population. Earlier studies showed that 45% view Islam as incompatible with Western values. Ordinary people, construction workers, office clerks, feel their identity is slipping away, their neighborhoods are changing, and the old political parties are living in ivory towers, preaching about diversity, while the common man sees only a loss of safety. In the 2023 elections, Wilders' party swept the polls, taking a quarter of the seats and becoming the largest party. Although he did not become prime minister, he managed to form a coalition and dominate the policy agenda. However, the political situation remains tense. By June 2025, reports surfaced that Wilders withdrew his party from the ruling coalition due to disputes over asylum and migration policies, causing the government to collapse and the prime minister to resign. The rise of Geert Wilders is the natural consequence of a system that preferred silence and procrastination until the pressure cooker exploded. The question facing the Netherlands now is not just about closing borders or passing new laws. It is far more dangerous and profound. Can a society survive without a shared identity? The Netherlands was a historical exception, a small nation that managed to open itself to the world without losing itself. But that delicate balance has been shattered. Tolerance remains, but cohesion is lost. There is no true integration, only separate communities living side by side with different rules, the bridges between them broken. An open society cannot survive unless there is something common that binds everyone together. When the word "we" disappears, a society turns into merely a place where people exist next to each other, without belonging to one another. The coming days will reveal whether the Netherlands can rebuild a new sense of shared community or if it will remain a fragile balance waiting to collapse at any moment. This has been the story of how the Netherlands transformed from a beacon of tolerance into a divided nation searching for its identity in the face of cultural upheaval. We would love to know what you think about this complex issue. Do you believe the Netherlands can return to how it was before, or has that ship already sailed? Please, do not hesitate to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. I am truly interested in hearing your perspectives. If you found this narrative engaging and informative, please don't be stingy with your support. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you can stay updated with our latest exclusive content. Thank you for your time and for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Goodbye for now.